Good morning, everyone. I hope you had fun last night. Not only at the event, it seems. So, good morning. We're running late. I need to make a few announcements. Let me just check. Tlantla, do we have that slide with the flow map? So, you have a flow chart, basically, on a card. And if we just show it up there, I want to point out to you where we are in the program in terms of its flow. So we should be somewhere like just after the somewhere like on that side. So after the UCT logo, not UCT, after the City of Cape Town logo. Bad word. So, from rollbacks to resilience, today. That's where we are. And I believe that it was appropriate yesterday to recognize all the ways in which we've struggled and suffered. That's what yesterday was about. Totally appropriate. And there's many ways of expressing our frustration, our struggle, our protest, in words, in actions, in art. That's a protest against erasure and silencing, and totally appropriate. So that's where we are in terms of the flow of the program. I need to make a few announcements. One is, it seems like it wasn't communicated as clearly as it should be, although I believe the well-being session yesterday afternoon made good use of it. There's a space that is meant for those who would like to take some time to just be quiet, be away from the crowd. If you can't do that outside, there's a wellness space. And I don't know how to explain it. If you go through all the exhibition space and you go to the left, it's a quiet spot with some beanbag kind of things. It's the, please make use of it if you would like to. As you heard from the Vice Chancellor of the university yesterday, if you'd like to explore the university, today is not a great day, it's raining, but please feel free to walk, right? So if you walk up the hill towards the mountain, towards the freeway, there should be a walkway under the freeway to get to the upper campus. This is the middle campus. And then there's lower campus and many other campuses. The upper campus is the old campus. You should be able to walk through there if you'd like to, and explore the university when you're able to. Can somebody please get that microphone? Somebody wants to say something over here.
Thanks, Neville. I just wanted to ask, for people who are not able to just freely walk, is there an option for them to be transported to explore?
That's a great question. Actually, somebody asked that yesterday about tours of the university. I'm not sure. I don't think they are. Our team that's organizing and hosting are at more than full capacity in terms of what we're doing. So, and we have to account for that. We will not be able to reimburse cash without the appropriate documentation. It's not a decision that's made, it's a requirement, right? So it's not a discretionary thing about if you ask nicely and you don't have the documentation, you'll get it, and if you don't ask, you won't get it. No, it's about the required documentation. So please bring that with you. And there will be people in the room at that time. If there's nobody there, please talk to Shakesha, and he will make sure that it's done on time. So today the weather turned. It's supposed to have turned yesterday, today late. The problem is that if it stays like this, we have a problem for tomorrow. It's actually not bad. It's not the rain that's so much of a problem, it's the wind. If tomorrow we are unable to go to Robben Island because the boats are suspended when the weather is bad, we will change the program and bring Thursday's program here to UCT on Wednesday and go to Robben Island either, well, we can't go on Friday, so probably on Thursday. Again, it's beyond the control of us. We will have to adjust as the weather dictates. If the boats are cancelled, we're simply not able to go. So we will keep an eye very closely on the weather all day today, and we will let you know what it's looking like for tomorrow. Yesterday's breakaway groups all were supposed to identify a 1-minute reporter who would be video recorded for 1 minute. We lost 2, Malawi and Zambia. So what we're going to do, we'll give the reports that we have, and then very briefly, I'm going to be standing right here next to you for 1 minute. Then to ask the people to report from the Zambia and Malawi country. Right? Please for 1 minute, so that everyone else is not unfairly treated, because they've been edited and cut to almost 1. Last night, a statement was issued, I believe publicly. We are aware of that statement in relation to the city of Cape Town, but more specifically, today, relevant today, in relation to Kopano as an event. With the trustees of the other foundation and the co-convening committee of Kopano, we would like to take our time to absorb what has been communicated, and at the appropriate time, if it is appropriate, we will communicate information that's relevant to it. But we're totally aware of it and take it very seriously. So, with that, let's, unless there's any other question or announcement that anyone wants to make. Great. With that, let's recap from yesterday's group discussion.
My name is Samuel Matsukure. I'm from Zimbabwe and work for Girls in LGBTI Association in Zimbabwe. After our discussions with the LGBTI sector in Zimbabwe at Kopano, one of the key issues that came out is that Zimbabwe has made so much progress within the HIV response, but there are still issues around pushback in terms of raising our identities, our sexual orientation, because the discourse is based around key populations and not the different diverse groups that exist within the LGBTI community. It is important that we continue to challenge the discourse as well as participate within social, economic, and political situation. We are also afraid and worried about the PVO bill that will be introduced in the country, which will curtail human rights organizations, including LGBTI community. It is therefore important that we call to the solidarity of other organizations within the region and also globally to make sure that where rights are violated, we stand together. And we also want you to look out for us even during elections in the next coming year.
My name is Pinti. I come from the Kingdom of eSwatini, where I work with the transgender community under Transwati. But as the country eSwatini, after the discussion at Kopano representing the LGBTI community, we discovered that we are moving towards the consortium, which is a bigger body of the LGBTI community, where we want to work in solidarity, because for quite some time we've worked in silos and we have lost so much in activism. The legislation of the country needs to be put into place, which has caused our losses as a community, and we also need to go back and start consulting with the community and feeding into the community that we work with.
My name is Nozizwe and I'm from Botswana. And in our discussion for 1 minute, we had a conversation about the challenges that we're experiencing. A lot of them are around a lack of intersectionality in terms of movements, because certain things tend to be in silos and we want to deal with things one at a go, as opposed to adopting things at the same time intersectionally. We also identified that there's a challenge in terms of research. Not enough people, queer folks, are producing knowledge for themselves, by themselves, for our own benefit. Funding also tends to be a concern for us, because sometimes the projects tend to be donor-centric as opposed to people-centric. But at the same time, we were able to acknowledge that there is growth in the movement and there is opportunity for more growth. And something that we have decided collectively as Botswana today is to take the conversation further and continue to have more instances of this nature where we meet, we commune, and we collectively reflect on ourselves.
My name is Florence F. Tragas. I'm a lesbian feminist activist from Namibia. Our country context, things that we were discussing was the impacts of COVID-19 in terms of how it has made us stronger as the LGBTQ plus movement. It has given us the opportunity as organizations to talk about what resilience means for us. How are we strengthening ourselves? How are we strengthening our organization? How are we thinking about sustainability? So we are at a very good place as a movement whereby we are talking about innovation, we are talking about the status of our community, we are talking about how we are caring for ourselves as activists and how we are caring for ourselves as a community.
I'm Terence from the Mauritius Island. So our discussion was regrouping 3 main countries, Mauritius, Madagascar and Seychelles. During the discussion we saw that we have many political and economical issues in terms of, the policies are here, but they are not really appropriate for the LGBT community. Those are the main aspects we spoke about during the discussion. We also spoke about the transgender difficulties, how they face difficulties in their countries, and how there was no real political will to help those people. So that is a big what we talk about during the discussions.
I'm Tulim Jwacha, representing South Africa. With regards to creating a roadmap in South Africa, what we spoke about is establishing a resource hub that will allow for others to reach out, building a database, a centralized database system, which will help in providing referrals for those in need, but also mapping and knowing where are activists located, should there be cases that require further support. There's a need of tracking of hate crime cases, tracking of money with regards to government directives and interventions. We also spoke about labor rights for LGBTI activists. We need spaces where we have these honest engagements. There's a need of addressing intimate partner violence, where perpetrators of violence are fellow activists. We spoke about visible collaboration in relation to the full decriminalization of sex work, and also internal politics about how we position ourselves that lead to working in silos. So for an example could be in the case where Prof. Mfakeng made a statement or created a platform where there was engagement. When there was a backlash, one organization stepped up to journey with Prof. Mfakeng and other organizations stepped back, and then this then was interpreted as if we do not support the organization's stance in creating and helping Prof. Mfakeng in redefining what is allyship. So there's a need for a collaborative voice in pushing for inclusivity in society, even if we have different opinions on certain matters. So there's a need to collaborate better.
My name is Tata Tinyani, here representing Lesotho. From our discussions, we have heard that Lesotho's organizations and activists that are working in the LGBTI community have had achievements in the legislature through the legal gender recognition, as well as the passing of the domestic violence bill, which includes SOGI. More than that, after the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen that HIV programming has successfully integrated to virtual programming, as well as they have developed an SRHR scorecard, which is being used in programming as well. We've also had achievements in the HPV vaccine that is currently going on that has included an LGBTI lens as well. In the community right now in Lesotho, we are working towards income generation activities to help decentralize our movements into the other districts, and these income generation activities give an autonomous sustainability to those communities so they can sustain themselves and do programs in the districts. There is good news that from this convening, organizations and our activists from Lesotho have decided to come together and collaborate in the form of a forum or a network so as to solidify the LGBTI movement in the country so we can collaborate on work and do the work that needs to be done.
Eu sou David Kanga, sou de Angola. Alguns dos pontos que nós encontramos nas discussões que nós tivemos com o meu grupo foram os desafios que nós encontramos no seio da comunidade LGBT na fase do confinamento por causa da Covid-19. Um deles foi o aumento do desemprego no seio da comunidade LGBT, o aumento do nível de problemas mentais no seio da comunidade, a falta de oportunidades de capacitação técnica e bem como a exclusão no seio familiar e a opressão psicológica e violência doméstica. Alguns desafios que nós encontramos foram as oportunidades de advocacia no seio das instituições governamentais, bem como a recolha de dados da situação socioeconômica da comunidade LGBT, e assim conseguimos criar estratégias que possam vir a ajudar a comunidade queer no acesso aos serviços de saúde, no acesso aos serviços de capacitação das organizações, bem como no acesso às capacitações técnicas para poderem ser integrados no mercado de trabalho.
Chamo-me Frank Lilesa, sou de Moçambique e nas discussões o que foi importante reter foi a questão de como é que a questão LGBT está a ser difundida, como está a ser interligada através desses espaços. E é bom voltar à história e ver como é que nós estamos de 10 anos para cá e que as discussões e os espaços cada vez estão a ser cada vez mais abrangentes. Temos muitos outros assuntos a ver com a comunidade LGBT a nível da África regional, mas a ideia de estar aqui e pôr todos estes planos e todas as questões, esses planos acelerados, é uma vantagem, e também incluir outras diversidades a nível da África Austral. Tem sido uma experiência muito boa. Espero que daqui a alguns 4 dias que vamos ter, consigamos, desde todo o contexto, problemas que enfrentamos, até a possíveis soluções, tenhamos um plano estratégico muito bem explorado e analisado e avançado.
Going forward, if the representative of the group does not do the video report back, we can't go through every group in the oral report back because we'll spend a whole session doing that. So please do make sure that the groups get their video reports to the camera. Here's the one here. And that is being done at the big other foundation, Dana, in the exhibition space, immediately after every small group discussion. So let's take the video feedback from the second set of discussion.
My name is Bree from Malawi, Zimbabwe, and I'm also a trans woman who's an entrepreneur, businesswoman, and a human rights advocate. I'm representing the group Economic Rollbacks, and the major outcomes from our group are that COVID-19 definitely intensified the hardships the LGBTIQ community have been facing. A lot of us were retrenched from our jobs, and it became even more difficult for those who are entrepreneurs to do business because of the lockdown. However, we have to think of opportunities. That is why we spoke in our group that if as LGBTIQ communities fail to get employed because we are not regarded pertaining to our gender expression or identity, then we have to create our own opportunities. We have to be the foundation that also creates economic empowerment for ourselves and our communities, the ones that we serve. So in a nutshell, what we are able to do, conferences or gatherings, whereby we discuss human rights advocacy, whereby we discuss access to healthcare and policy reform. Why not discuss access to business hubs, access to improving economic livelihoods of the marginalized or often thought of as vulnerable LGBTIQ communities?
My name is Nosana Sondiazi. From our dialogue group discussion, advocacy rollbacks, advocacy policy rollbacks, what I can remember that stick in my mind were points that included when we were asked the question, who are the gatekeepers when it comes to advocacy? And politicians are the gatekeepers, definitely. How do we access them? There was a comment that was made that we, as the queer community, need to enter political spaces and not rely on politicians to speak on behalf of us. But then another point was that even in political spaces, queer community members operating in political spaces won't come out to be queer. They would rather exclude that fact and therefore not be fully representational for LGBTI issues. And then the current problems when it comes to policy requirements during lockdown especially were that sex workers particularly were becoming homeless. A lot of us are homeless in this time because our homes with our families are not safe spaces, as well as the need to see where can we access things like testosterone and hormone therapy in times of lack of access to anything.
My name is Nelly Tobeja. I'm a trans and gender diverse rights activist from Botswana. I'm coming from the group organizing Rollbacks. 3 key theme areas we were able to pick were accountability in realizing that we built a movement for the longest time and we haven't really realized how then we are going to sustain the growth and the evolution of the movement and sustain the transformation that the movement is realizing in the generational gaps from our elder LGBTI human rights activists and the gaps from those who are coming up now to say, how then do we mentor and sustain the movement? Also realize
I'm Nirupa Maharaj. I am from Durban. I am a parent discussant at Kopano. I was part of the wellness group this afternoon and it was really amazing. And the key points were my mental health, in fact everybody's mental health. And the key points that we covered today were very apt because we spend a lot of time on trying to be there for everybody, but we're just not there for ourselves. And I think, you know, when we are there for ourselves and we take care of our own well-being, we're able to take care of other people. So it was actually quite a packed room, and I was very, very happy to be a part of that space. So thank you so much, and all I can say is, please, everybody, I love you lots. It's very difficult. I'm a mother and I struggle daily with the loss of my child. So it's a mental challenge on a daily basis. And I can understand how you individuals must struggle also on a daily basis. But If ever you need to chat, I'm a mother willing to embrace and to assist wherever I can. So thank you to Kopano, thank you to this kind team, and I am always blessed to be a part of this space.
There's a slight change to the time. We will finish at 11. So we'll go to it now and finish at 11. So my colleague here is going to introduce the participants.
So yeah, today we're going to ponder on what has kept us present and engaged and what has brought us down as well. For the moderator, we have Crystal Hendricks from Intersex South Africa. And for the panelists, we have Usna Manunga, Feminist Branch Mozambique. Masasonke Shabangu, House of Our Pride from eSwatini. And Ankokame Muswe, Men for Health and Gender Justice from Botswana.
Hi everyone, good morning once again. I was just watching these videos and all of these beautiful faces and really among beautiful, resilient people. So it's good for us to be having this conversation today. Thank you also for all of your patience. And yeah, so my name is Crystal Hendricks. I'm the Intersex Rights Officer at Iranti. I'm wearing the color green because it represents money, and just to tell you that intersex people need your money. So don't forget that intersex organizing needs money, very important. And I'm going to allow my panelists to introduce themselves.
Good morning. My name is Professor Shabama. I know everyone is wondering, Professor, no, it's not a title for now, but we go in there. So Professor is a name, and I'm from eSwatini, from an organization called the House of Our Pride. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor.
A very good morning to you all. I have to put a disclaimer, if you saw me dancing yesterday, please forgive me. I'll try to do better today. Bon dia. My name is Kopano. Mr. O usually works. I work for an organization in Botswana called Men for Health, which is primarily providing health services to LGBTI, particularly gay men and MSM. I've also, as of the beginning of this month, was appointed Gender Commissioner in the President's National Gender Commission.
We are doing the things, right?
I don't know if they know what they just did.
So we are having, before we start, I do also want to acknowledge Usna from Mozambique. Usna was supposed to be part of our panel this morning. However, they are one of the ones that lost their luggage and they still have not located it, and therefore they could not be here this morning. But we also want to acknowledge Usna on this panel as being part of our panel. We want to talk about, what has kept us present, what has kept us going, and also, what were some of the struggles that we touched on yesterday. And, during the last few years going through this pandemic, I think it has really exposed a lot of the oppressions that us as a community go through, but it's also highlighted them, right? We know prior to the pandemic, we were marginalized, right? Our rights are stripped away from us. And during the pandemic, it was highlighted, right? I think for me personally, there was certain things that was actually very highlighted was the access to healthcare, right? Everybody was on the same level and we just did not have access to healthcare. But not even the access, let's talk about the deprioritization, English, of healthcare. We are still sitting right now with our own pandemic where people do not have access to hormone replacement therapy because it was put on the back burner because of COVID. And I mean, this is something that we have to talk about as well. We have to talk about the discrimination, the stigma, you know, what is highlighted in some African countries. Our community was blamed for COVID. You know, people were saying because of our actions, we've brought this pandemic amongst people. And sad, but this is unfortunate things that was highlighted and happened. You know, some of us were not safe. You know, we were isolated, trapped in our homes, but we were not safe, and we faced so much physical abuse, emotional abuse, and like there was just no way out for some of us, especially when we were in the beginning stages of the harsh lockdown. And then lastly, our employment, our livelihoods, we were stripped away of many of these things, but yet today we are here. We are all here and we are sitting in this room looking as beautiful as ever. So I want to move to my panel, and you know, we're speaking a lot about movements and we're speaking a lot about organizations, but I want to ask you, Professor, when everything happened, 2020, COVID, global lockdown, how did you feel? What was your immediate measures you had to put in place for you to stay resilient through this pandemic?
Thank you, Krista, for the question. Okay, firstly, I think I was supposed to expand in introducing myself because now I feel like, okay, I missed the point. There's a lot of things that I do. In eSwatini, I also do filming. I'm a producer. I also act myself. I do music. Also, I serve in a couple of board members as well, like from the diabetes, because I do believe as a community we need to also participate in the other things, in the other events. Okay, coming back to the question that Krista asked, I think this was a traumatic experience. You know, when it started, everyone panicked. We then, you know, had to come to a point where we sit down, plan, re-strategize what exactly are we going to do to actually fit in between this kind of a pandemic. Because we know there are laws where we live, so they started, you know, implementing laws like you can't travel without a permit, so you had to get a letter from the chief to actually go to town to buy food. Then you can imagine from the community the things that were happening, because now some of the members from the community are living through sewing. They have their small union offices in town where they do their sewing and those things. Then they need to now have letters to say, I'm going to do my small business there, and you can't travel as a group. At that point, you're using one car when you go into your office because you're sharing a space in one room, you have 5. It was so hard. We needed to actually go to other people, our friends who have businesses, to write letters, like fake letters for us to travel to our small and medium businesses in town. So it wasn't easy. It was very, very hard. It was very hard.
Oh, great, thank you. So I think the question fundamentally is around resilience, right? How have we remained resilient? And for me, I think what really came out for me was how we as a movement have remained resilient. And I think it would be wrong for me to not acknowledge the power that sits in this room, right? The power and the strength and the resilient spirit that we carry. Because this very movement angers the people. They wonder, how have we managed to be? They wonder, how do we still find purpose and meaning in life when they have done so much to us, right? So, perhaps to answer that question, I want us to give a great round of applause, but not because we can, because we acknowledge the resilient spirit that we all carry, the power that we carry, the power of those who came before us in you. 17 countries, I think we can do better. Thank you. But I think we also found our voice as a movement, as an African movement. Though we went through struggle and pain, we've had a moment to reimagine what it means to be queer and African. We've had a moment to reimagine what it is to exist when nobody wants us to exist. And I think that's one of the things that we have done as a movement, finding our voice, redefining what it means to be queer and African, despite all the challenges that we go through.
Thank you so much. And I think what stood out for me is really reimagining, right? Like, we were all so set in our ways. I'm sure all of us walked into 2020 with our annual work plan, our strategic plan, and we were ready to do the things. And then, boom, you know, COVID happened and everything shut down. So I really want to ask my panelists, so you had all this plans for 2020, right? Like, you imagined your achievements for that year. How did you turn things around to still be able to work when we were in a global shutdown?
Thank you, Krista. You know, when everything happens, we know when working in our organizations, we have these activities that are planned for the next 3 years, But then when this thing happened, we had to, put some strategies in place that can actually make us still be a team, still work together, still push the mandate of keeping the community together. So one of those things was to limit the number of people going to the office, because we had to keep some things going for the community. We provided clinical services for the community. You may understand there are people who are accessing, art through the community centers. We call it community centers, where the community can go access the services. So when we're sitting down now, we needed to also engage the funder to say, there's a twist that has to happen amid this whole pandemic. So we had to actually limit the number of people going to the office, and have some days where someone is going to do that financial goal this day, just to keep us going. As well, more than that, we had to actually now understanding that many of our community members were losing jobs. And what happened was, they were the first ones to lose jobs in, I won't say the corporate space, because from the corporate space in our country, there's less people who are hired there. But from those, small shops, barbers, restaurants, where our companies hired, most of them were retrenched, and the excuse was COVID. So now there's a lot of them who are supposed to go home, and where? Because when you go home, there's stigma, there's all that, and the siblings are back, everyone is stuck in that family. Then you understand gender-based violence also started, increasing. But more than that, then they had to actually find shelter among other members, which as well now had to come to me. Says, I remember when we had a meeting, I told some of the members, I love the respect that was happening around the community. You would find one member having 3 visitors in the same house. It wasn't easy. Some would say, I'm tired, I want my space. But because we had to keep each other going for that period of time, and also in that moment, we tried to find jobs for those who had lost jobs. And the only way to do that was to keep knocking to our friends who can, still bring them to life, so that when COVID ends, they still can go back to life. Because understanding that also, we wouldn't absorb them for the rest of the year, for the rest of the 2 years where COVID was now taking place. So there was a lot of changes. Also coming back to the office, understand that mental health issues were now starting to strike. We had to actually sit down as a consortium with other organizations. We need to actually start having psychosocial supporters in our spaces to provide counseling to the members. So that happens. We're successful, I think, in the both towns, Manzini and Mbabane, we had psychosocial supporters spaced, and then you could access them. And when, in that moment, you understand it was hard to travel, so we had to actually have the letters for one car to be able to pick a member from a certain place to access service at that place. Even the clinical services. We may also move from that, from the PSS services that we're providing, to go to even the agri fields, go to the proper fields, go to the initiations themselves, because we still had to give them substance kits if they want, but that would be a person who's closer to you, where you can actually walk that distance. And then when they want more services, then we had to actually arrange having that be highly unbranded, because also they don't want our cars to be branded and traveling. They feel like, oh, you're just moving normally and you're the one who's spreading COVID all over. And also, I understand there's the demonizing of the LGBT community as a whole. So it'll be like, yeah, these are the demons who are bringing COVID all over. So now, you can't even travel with that car because they're feeling like, oh, it's you. Hey, you did this, you started this. You can't, the police were like, so hard. So we started now taking the stickers off. You take the treatment, you drop door to door, right? And then talking to the funders also to come to terms with us when we're trying to reprogram, take some funds into food parcels. As the LGBT organizations, we were able to win this because we worked as a team. And our voice together, you know, was epic because they could listen to us than just one organization saying, no, we're thinking of, you know, reprogramming these funds to start giving food parcels to the community because they lost jobs. So when we started doing that, it was a little bit easier to actually sway between those kind of things. It was hard, but we were able to live a little bit, understanding that sometime, somehow we're going to be fine again. So I think those are the kind of things that we put in place. The food parcels were able to actually be distributed in the regions, and most of our community members were getting. But as much as those were happening, there were funds from the government that were dispersed as to support the public in this pandemic, but the community was excluded, which makes it so hard because even with the food parcel, we couldn't cover everyone. But we were able to move because another thing that helped us, with our monies like those who were still working, they were able to accommodate those ones who were like retrenched, who were not staying with their families, who were accommodating them in our spaces and feeding them for that time. So it was a little bit, you know, hard, but we were able to move together in solidarity.
Thank you so much for that, Professor. And I think that it's so important that sometimes we are also very hard on ourselves, right? Because as a community, we want to show up for one another, but we also have to realize that you can only do what you physically can, right? There's only so much you can do as a person, you know, so much you can do humanly possible. And sometimes the fact of just doing, right? Because before the pandemic, we were very connected as a community, right? We had these gatherings, we had meetings, we were seeing each other physically, right? We were able to actually feel and hear and just see each other. And when the pandemic happened, you know, there were so many bans on traveling. We were restricted. In South Africa, we couldn't do even inter-province traveling. And there was just a way that we were not connected with one another. And myself as an intersex person, right? I know this feeling for so long, you know, prior to COVID, prior to the pandemic. For most intersex people, they are always told that, no, there's no one like you, you are just this way, and you shouldn't talk about being intersex, and you shouldn't talk about your body. And you're already put in that isolation where you actually think, well, I actually don't have community, and I have no one to speak with. And this is what intersex people has been living with for their entire existence. And when the pandemic hit, I felt like the community could now also understand the isolation of intersex people when everybody had to be in isolation, you know, how it feels for intersex people that sometimes does not have community, that are not supported by the community, and that's not brought into conversations when it comes to the community. And I think so that's why we take positives and negatives away from the isolation as well, because I also feel we could also hold space for one another during this period of being in isolation, because we saw that there was a need to do more for each other. Where we couldn't do it physically, there was other ways that we could do it. And when you think of the context in Botswana, what were the ways and the means as an organization or as a community you tried staying connected to ensure that each other is uplifted during the pandemic?
So COVID hit, the world stopped. The world was learning how to live in spaces that is restricted, right? But what the world didn't know about the community, the LGBTI community, is that we've been dealing with that, right? So everyone was going through a situation because, oh my gosh, I can't move, I can't feed myself, I can't do this, I can't buy a drink. That was a struggle for many of us. But we have been living through that struggle for many of us. And so, as you know, as much as the pandemic and the period brought
terrible things or negative things, I think as Botswana and maybe the bigger community in Africa, we're able to find ourselves. We're able to reinvent ourselves. There was, every single week, there was a webinar. There was a Zoom call. I mean, at some point, we're all tired of them, but we're all in there. You know, it was activists in Botswana, in Zimbabwe, in Uganda, around how do we navigate this space, right? How do we care for our mental health? There were LGBTI persons in Botswana who were receiving support from a therapist in Uganda through WhatsApp, through an email, through a call. So through all this process, we're able to find new and nascent ways of organizing. And I think we can take that away from that. We've been able to find how to best use new media, new technology, to see that we're beyond just physical. We can actually connect in other spaces. And I think we've also, through this period, we're able to build a new generation of activists, right? We come from a point where we were inspired by, you know, the likes of Dr. Bev, the likes of Simon Nkoli, the likes of Virginia, the likes of Kane, young man, many others. They inspired us. And I think during this period, we're able to rethink, will we be the next generation Simon Nkoli? Will they have someone to look up to as we had? And the new generation in Botswana, I can tell you, they don't care about rules in politics. They're leaving. They're leaving. They're intentional. They want to be here. And so I think those are some of the things that we kind of got. Finding, as the world finds itself, we were finding how to reinvent ourselves and how to ensure that we are constantly relevant.
Thank you so much. And yeah, like it's all about reinventing ourselves on a daily basis and finding new ways to do this important work. I think we spoke about, you know, I think at one point all of us were completely zoomed out during this whole pandemic. I'll be honest, I think I fell asleep on one of the Zoom calls as well because it was this Zoom call after the other, and it came to a point where mentally and physically you were just drained, right? You know, like we're all working in this field, and we're all about, you know, body language and wanting to interpret, you know, what people are saying and how they are reacting. And Zoom was very difficult, you know, and also some of us that suffer from mental illnesses, and you know, sometimes, like I myself, that's been diagnosed with ADHD. During Zoom, I just could not concentrate. Like I just could not listen to conversations. I just could not. There was nothing that was holding my attention, right? And in that also, I had to try to reinvent myself to find new ways of, okay, how can I do this work in this new way of doing it, which was extremely difficult. The problem also with the whole Zoom and online was that people just did not have connectivity, right? And there was two things, right? We could be inclusive because we could invite more people. But the other part was that people that was in rural areas in Africa just did not have connection, they did not have the bandwidth, and they just could not join the calls. So some of us that lived in areas that were more fortunate and we had more privilege of fiber or Wi-Fi, you know, we could gain a lot out of it. But then there was this big part of the community that just did not have access. And if you think of your country in eSwatini, how did you manage to deal with, like, you know, connectivity, by getting people together, getting them online, getting them excited, you know, for this work?
It wasn't easy, I will say. It wasn't easy. It was hard because as much as our funders were able to actually twist some funds into data, say, but not for everyone. So what will happen is you need to actually choose the people who are going to be in that call. But as much as we got used to it, to actually supporting the others who can't, because at some point we had to share, like, organize some 20 rands to buy data for the next person who's a little bit far from that access of the internet. And then, or you will find two people in one space, sharing the same gadget because you're trying to minimize the cost just to connect. But it's something I was still using, I know, because you know, the internet use, the social media thing, the Zooms, the Teams, we started using it like too much at the time, but we're still there now. And I think that's one thing that also we've taken from the pandemic space, that you know, the Zoom meetings, like the visual meetings, can still work even when the pandemic is not there. I think it's something also we need to just to get used to, because we may never know what the world will go to the next point. And then these kind of things taught us that we need to be prepared for anything. So up to this time, we're still using those kind of visual meetings, and they are productive. As much as you can say that, you know, face-to-face meetings were the best, but we got into a point where we understood that this was necessary, and it was something that we needed to keep going at that point. So we did it. It was hard. Some people were not going to be in the meeting. They'll log in, and then they're off again. They log in. They can't even take anything from the meeting. It was really depressing, because that's somebody who wants to participate, wants to add value to this thing, but they can't do anything, because sometimes in the country we have the two networks, which is the eSwatini mobile and 10. So at some point of the world, like our areas, there's no coverage. So this person, the only cheapest data is from the eSwatini mobile, and then you can't get them. And the funder says we're finding only eSwatini mobile. So now we need to buy data for MTN, because the coverage is not everywhere in the country. So it was really hard. It was really hard. But for those who were living in our spaces, we were able to actually join our calls. We become 3 in 1 call, and other people that side, they had 3 as well, and we become 6 that way. But it's only 2 gadgets. So that way we were able to actually keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor. And speaking of funders, right, and the limits that was put in place and all the restrictions, and I think I just want to spend a moment on this question. So from your side, Mr. O, do you think during the pandemic, what was happening, do you feel that donors and funders became more flexible? Did they step up, or did some of them just remain silent? What was your experience?
So I think funders and donors and partners generally became a little bit more flexible, because for once, also it was not just community which is affected by this situation. Funders were also going through this, pandemic in their different ways, perhaps not to our level, but they were. So I think generally there was that flexibility, and I think that flexibility came with a number of things. And I think one, it was collectively redefining language, right? The LGBTI community, we go through so much stigma, discrimination, hate. And a lot of people know that, but also through this period, we're also able to tap into our courage, right? So while we go through stigma and discrimination, we've remained courageous. We've done some impeccable work despite what we've went through. We were able to tap into love for one another. We're able to tap into our purpose, right? So I think there has, through that, there has been a redefinition of the language that we use, that we don't only tell stories of pain and discrimination, we've also gotten to tell stories of our courage, of our courage, our strength, our power. The power, the strength that trans women all over Africa, despite the challenges that they go through, were able to still wake up in the morning and say, I choose me, right? And that's the courage, that is the other side of the language, that while we tell the next generation about the pain and the discrimination, we should be able to tell them that you can be, you can leave. There came older other people who have been able to leave, and so we can tap into that energy and to say, if they were able to, then we also can. Like I said, they walk, so we run, and the coming generation will probably have to, just all be marathoning for the next couple of years. But we found that there are other sides of our story and other sides of our journey and struggle.
Yeah, just to add to what Mr. Owens just said, I think it also, that period also was able to bring out the best from us as a team, because we were able to actually discover like the efforts we can actually put in place to help the other person. What we also discovered was more than just a team, we care for each other as a community. Because we didn't want to see the next person suffering while we care. So I also discovered that, more than necessary, first, there is respect around the communities, because you will see people, accommodating people and not taking advantage of them. I thought that was best. Because, what happens is you will keep someone in your house, and because they're eating your food, they're using your bathroom, and you paying the bills in favor. Let's have sex or something. So in that space, in that trauma we're going in, everyone was able to respect the other person. They are here just for this moment so that we can go through this phase together. So I discovered that there's a lot of respect that revolves around the community, but we can never know about it when we are just in those sides. So in that space of living together and making sure we're taking care of each other, we learn that there's respect around the space.
Thank you so much for that. And I think it's so important, and what stands out for me is that we've stretched ourselves, right, during this pandemic to ensure that we show up for one another. But I also feel what took us to this place of resilience is seeing joy, right? Just seeing the joy of our community. Because often when we tell our stories, it's about all the different oppressions that we face as a community. But I've also seen during this pandemic, we've been focusing on a lot of joy, joy of the LGBTQI plus community. And I think someone yesterday on the panel said that there's no such thing as a small win. Every win is a big win. And I think all of us were really encouraged, and we were moved, and we were excited about seeing wins in different countries like Botswana. And we were all winning together, and we were all succeeding together. And I think that's ultimately what has brought us into this place, or into the space, is that if we can focus on each other's wins and we can focus on the joy, there's really ways that we can come together to reinvent ourselves and look, this is the hardships that we are facing, but this is also what we can do about it, and so let's do it together. And I think that is the most important part of us actually just doing it together. I know we only have a few minutes left, and we wanted to get some engagement from the audience. So I just want to ask the last question to both my panelists, and hopefully to the participants as well, is that we are in this moment, right? Yeah. We are at Kopano 2022. We are here physically together. What does this moment mean to you, being in this space with your fellow beautiful women?
Thank you. This is a beautiful question. I understand that last time I enjoyed myself. More than anything, I've taken a lot from this space. A lot that I use in eSwatini. Sometimes, from the other countries, from the 7 countries that we are here today, the things that I've taken from the past one day, yesterday only, it's unbelievable. And I think I was telling someone from the members that even if I can go home today, there's things I can do already. This is the space, this is the moment, this is where we feel ourselves, this is where we understand what exactly we're facing, because we need to learn from the other countries and then be able to polish some things up and be able to use it in our own countries, because that's how we grow as a movement. Because what I believe in is, if eSwatini is standing still and Zambia and Botswana are moving, we're still not moving, because we need to move together to actually to be able to actually run the mine and cover a bigger space. We need to be together. So that's why we're here together as these countries, because we need to move in a, together in a larger margin. The solidarity as a regional, consortium is also very important. If Mr. Hoy in Botswana is doing well, and in Lesotho they are not doing well, this also comes into the laws that are implemented. When you go to SA, if South Africa now, their laws are accommodated to same-sex marriage somehow, but it's not implemented. You understand? But those kind of moves, if they can be everywhere, it's a step forward, because that's how we move. Coming back into my country, I understand it's been a long way since we started this journey, but we see the changes. Policy-wise, we've worked so hard, and I understand we're getting there. But with us alone, without South Africa, without Botswana, we wouldn't be where we are today. Yeah, so this is the space, this is the feeling. Yeah, and you know, as we're getting there, we would acknowledge that while maybe getting there is a little slow, there has been pockets of, even in systems that, you know, ordinarily have used religious or cultural fundamentalism, there have been few people to come out to say, I'm a pastor, but I want to accept an LGBTI person, right? So I think that's great. What does this moment mean for me? When we were at the airport and I was with Marcus and Zeni, just wave, it's your time to shine. Marcus and Zeni does incredible work with the P flag in Botswana. So I was with Marcus and Zeni and Bradley, my good friend Bradley. And oh yeah, there he is moving. And so the lady at the airport asked us, what are you here for? And you kind of want to say a meeting, but it's not exactly a meeting because you're going home, right? You're coming to Kopano. But you can't exactly say home because then why is your passport not saying South African? We might just need to talk to you. But I thought we're going to Kopano. And I thought, what does Kopano mean to me? And I thought, but it's a festival, right? So we're coming to a festival of ideas, a festival of dialogue, a festival of interaction, a festival of love. And that's essentially what I think Kopano means to me. And in Setswana, a gathering, as you've all seen, a gathering where important discussions are had. But part of discussing important conversations is that you don't engage on important things with non-important people. You get me? Yeah. Right? You don't have a presidential conversation with non-presidents. And so I thought that's exactly it. We're having an important conversation with unimportant people. And while we, might be 200 or 300, I know that each and every one of us carry a number of people. Yeah. So we might be 20 or 100 or 200. But in actual fact, we're more than that. Yeah. Because I'm not just myself, I'm carrying a number of people. You're carrying a number of people. So we're carrying Africa, and this is it. So that's for me, is we're here.
Yeah, definitely. This is exactly what both of you have said, like in the space, like we come here to learn from one another, we come here to grow together as a community, we come to share, we come to reflect, and it feels good. It feels good to be in the space, it feels good to be amongst chosen family. Yeah, so I think we have about 10 minutes left or so, so I think we can open the floor. If there are any questions or comments, or someone just wants to say hi, the mics are on the side, so it's over the lights. Okay, you can go. Yeah. You can move it.
Yeah.
Hate me, actually. Okay. Hi.
Hey.
I wrote this down so that, hi everybody, hi. And I think I mentioned this yesterday, that I'm struggling quite deeply with this concept of resilience. And I understand that it's an important thing. We must be able to pat ourselves on the back and reflect on how far we've come, and all of this is very important. But I worry about the extent to which we glamorize having to be resilient. And that perhaps the conversation should be about not having to be resilient to start with, right? So I suppose the question is, how do we ensure that there's sustainability even within that resilience, right? And we're thinking about it now within, can everybody hear me? Yes. Okay, cool. Anti-short, short people's lives matter. But you know what I mean? Jesus is so many people having to do this. I'll just explain my own mind next time. Thanks. Thanks, I appreciate that. So, and the reason why I'm saying this is because the movements that we have here are framed in a particular way, but it's not the first time that people are mobilizing around movements, right? So if we want to think of it in terms of the racial conversation, specifically in this country, and I mean across the continent because of colonialism, we do know that there's had to be resilience of black people or marginalized people against people that are not those categories of race, right? But black people have had to be resilient, and then we get congratulated for it to say, oh my God, well done for really surviving that. And it's like, you literally tried to kill me. Like, racism is shit. Like, how are you giving me a pat on the back for surviving such bullshit? So in which ways are we putting in sustainable ways so that in future, when more movements continue to come across, people don't have to be resilient. We can say it was a movement, there was a mandate, it was achieved, we're going on to the next thing, right? So I think the first thing is, what's the sustainability of resilience pragmatically going forward? And then, second of all, with the COVID conversation as well, I feel like the conversation is very lazy around COVID. We're very quick to say, oh, you know, COVID really did a number on us. Oh man, that really sucked, huh? But what are we really doing about what that means? So if you're an organization and people do get COVID, what are you doing? Are you giving them days off, or are you just giving them the 5 days to quarantine or whatever, and then you need to be back at the office to submit your quarterly 4 report? And even, again, with the sustainability, what are we saying about long COVID? Because there's effects that we don't see, there's effects that we might not know, but it's still COVID. So I'm saying when we speak about COVID in terms of resilience, we're saying, well done for testing positive, well done for taking your vitamins, 10 days, you're good, let's go. And I'm saying this as somebody that's had COVID twice, so you know what I mean, like, the long COVID is a real thing. So in which ways are we really addressing what COVID means, as opposed to it being like a nice word to throw around, like, oh, I had COVID or whatever. And then the third thing might be, Botu and I were having this discussion in terms of, especially with the kind of work that we do, sometimes the funding tends to be health-centered. Like, we know that we want to push human rights, but the funder wants to talk about health. But in which ways are we readjusting that very same health perspective to adjust to COVID? So in our proposals, are we now saying we need funding for people that have long COVID? We have funding for people that can't work at home, or some people who working from home is not adjustable for them. In which ways are we reprogramming the health perspective to make sure that COVID is at the fore of it in a real, inclusive way? Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Okay. So I'm a little older than a professor, so I'll take it easier. I'll respond to the easy conversations. I think the issue around sustainability is essentially, when does it stop, right? So when does the hate stop? When does the when can we just be? When can we just leave? When does it stop? Unfortunately, it doesn't stop now. For me, I think the sustainability of the movement and the sustainability of it all lies in all of us here present in this room. How do we create, so I'm very interested, I'm always interested in the next generation of queer activists, queer people. So my thing is, how do we create those spaces to allow the next generation not to necessarily be as resilient as we've had to? Because for many African queer people, resilience is not an option. You don't choose, no, I'll be resilient today, I'll be strong today. It's something that you have to do for you to survive. Livelihood, life, literally. So for me is, how can we be able to create, all of us here beyond the space, how can we be able to create spaces that allow others not to be as tough as we have to be, right? Not to be crying through the onion as we spoke yesterday. And I think we can find different, it doesn't have to be major ways. Different, you spoke, Professor, about creating our own homes, and I think Godfrey spoke about this yesterday, our own houses becoming homes to other people, other than just myself. I think small steps, we're getting there, we should be able to get there. But for now, you know, resilience is not an option. We have to be, so that we can be alive and those around us. Many activists in this room have been abused, beaten down, so that others who do not necessarily work for the organization, who sometimes don't even affiliate to the organization, people just hear Lekhabiwe and they go, yo! You know, for my own style. But Lekhabiwe goes through it for everyone. So I think it's us creating those little spaces, pockets of people to, a bit of softness, for others. I don't know how that looks like, but yeah, a bit of it.
Yes, no. Thank you. I think you put it in the right way, because it's about survival. You know, when we speak about resilience, it's not about the choice to say, no, today I'm choosing to ignore everything. You know, there's a point where you just need to run, where you just need to protect yourself. You know, I usually say when the stigma and discrimination happens like in the town, the community shouldn't respond to the transport operators. Mostly are those ones who are like having the harassment mostly. So it's like you don't choose to say, I don't want to talk, but for your survival, for your safety, something you need to do. So when we come to the next question about organizations, what are we doing exactly when it comes to the whole COVID program? What exactly are we doing to actually make sure maybe we, as organizations, we're giving people information? I feel like as much as we can talk about COVID, that it's been there, this is what we did, but we are trying our best to give people as much information as we can. And also providing PPE is very important to say, protect yourself, protect the places that you're going to meet on the street. Those kind of things like not traveling when you're not supposed to. Because we do understand that we like this, we like drinking, and then I'll go to a bar to drink every day, and those things, you know, expose me to COVID. So we need to actually have our ways also to say, let me buy my drinks for the week and stay in my space and drink there. Those kind of things. So I feel like as organizations, we need to teach people to be responsible for their lives and people that they love. Actually, this is what we are supposed to be teaching everyone, because in the whole community livelihood, in our daily living, we need to actually to understand that we need to do whatever we are doing for the community, because we are doing for the people that are close to us, the people that we care about. If I'm trying to say, I don't want to expose somebody on the internet because they were in a party, this is why people be taking pictures of people and saying, no, this one's already in a party, this is actually by people in Manzini. If you do that and you're part of the community, just understand you're not just exposing those people in the party and yourself as well. Because the moment anything happens to those people, it affects everyone in the community and the whole way that we're doing around the sector. Yes, so I think that's all.
Yeah, thank you so much. And also just to speak about the question of health, I think myself and Buto also had this conversation where we looked at the proposal recently, and it was highlighted on the proposal that we will not support any COVID-related support on the proposal. And we were having the discussion of how are we going to find ways of writing this proposal and still including some COVID health and COVID relief into this proposal, because we are still in the pandemic, right? Like COVID has not left us, COVID is still here. And there is ways that we have to find to support our community, those that have long COVID, those that have COVID over multiple occasions. And so even though you are getting those that are saying we will not do any COVID relief or COVID support, we still have to strategize ways in where we can articulate ourselves to say that, but well, we need the COVID relief and we need the COVID support, and I think that's important for us together, like as a community, like how do we strategize over what our needs are. I do say there's a few people, and I just want to acknowledge that, you know, we do have to go to tea, but we'll still take all the questions and all the comments. If we are not able to answer them right now, after the tea break, we have an additional session that's going to continue in different groups about the conversation that we were having, and definitely myself or panelists or whoever you wish to speak to after the break will gladly answer your questions and, you know, go through. But we'll still take all the comments and the questions, but if we can't answer them now, we'll have a session after the break. Sazi, I see you.
Alright, namaste. Alright, so mine is actually a comment, or because it's not more of a question, is that we are fighting, or we are saying being resilient is something that we have to do to live. But COVID has taught us other ways of being family, or being part of the queer bigger family, because we were stranded and we didn't have other things. But my question would be, or my comment would be, what have we taken from it going forward? Because yeah, we are talking what we made us go through whatever that we're going through, or what we're still going through. But what have we taken, or what have we learn, and what were the lessons learned to take us forward? Because we're still going to be in the same spot next year if we are saying this happened and and we're not going forward. What are we going to take and say this is on the table right now and this is not what we need to do, and then we can move forward? Because we're tired of talking about this. I believe the reason why we are tired of being resilient is because we know that it's possible to be not resilient and still be. So what have we done to actually be okay and be alive and move forward? That would be a question on the house, or a comment on the house, and to think about it and say, what should we do as activists, as individuals, to ensure that we do not have to be resilient and just exist?
Could we have one on this side? We have some.
Morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the insightful conversation. I just have two questions. As we roll back in time, what has been our greatest milestone of success in the region when it comes to social and legal reform? And what has been the reinvention there? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bom dia a todos. A minha pergunta vai para o Health for Man. Eu queria saber, em tempo de Covid, como é que foi a experiência na questão das novas infecções? Por exemplo, no nosso país, em tempo de Covid, as novas infecções aumentaram bastante, e a dificuldade do acesso ao tratamento antirretroviral. Obrigado.
Thank you. Is there someone that could translate, please? Oh.
Good morning. My name is Carol. I'm going to try and quickly just translate what Carlos Fernandez, Director of ARIS, and he would like to ask to the health man what were the index or the number of infections comparing to before the COVID, comparing between the COVID, during the COVID and before the COVID, the oscillations of number, and what actually was done to mitigate the situation. If it unclear.
My question about the new infection.
The new infections.
Okay.
So he wants to know about the new infections of HIV during the pandemic in relation to the previous one, and what were the action taken for it.
Thank you. Would you like me to answer right now? So, so in terms of numbers, honestly, I really don't know the numbers. That is the honest truth. But I know what we did during the pandemic in Botswana, the Men for Health, Bonel, and other partners in this room collectively found ways that we can be of assistance to men, particularly queer men, MSM, gay men, in terms of ensuring that they have access to consistent supply of medication, ART, for those who are on ART, because there were lockdown restrictions, travel restrictions. So, like I said, us, ensuring that we're able to have conversations with our community. Would you like us to drop for example, your medication at your door? Would you like us to post it? Which better way would you like us to give you this service? And we try to create, like I said earlier on, there were LGBTI persons in Botswana who were having access to therapy in Uganda or Kenya. Would you like to talk to someone? And of course, during COVID, we saw an uprise in issues of intimate partner violence and violations because it was stuck home, right? And someone said yesterday, many of those houses are not home to us. So people had to deal with what they've been running away from, or ways that they've been coping out, normal coping mechanisms. We couldn't use them because we are back home. So we try to find ways that we can be able to engage you and access to support, mental health support, health support, and different kind of support. I think what we are taking from here, what we could possibly take from this period, my thinking would have to take being intentional, and perhaps we need to re-look at what intentionally being allyship means, intentional solidarity. How do we stick with each other in the true sense? Because I think before COVID, we were all just, we are family, my brother, my sister, you know. But during the hard times, we're really able to interrogate on what that allyship and how does it practically look like. So I'm hoping that we can be able to carry some of that. As I shared earlier on, you know, at the beginning of this month, I received an appointment to be in the National Gender Commission. And so we had a training at the beginning, a training with members of parliament and ministers around what this means. And I asked questions around soji, you know, gender beyond men and women, right? And I don't know if Kate is here, would remember that our speaker, Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Robben Island, in 2010, there was a headline that he spoke and said, "Gay men are worse than dogs." Do you remember that, Kate? He said, "Gay men are worse than dogs." And at this previous training, he said to the parliamentarians, we need to make better policies for LGBTI persons. And that for me, I understand the speaker did not just wake up and decide, oh, it's a great time to speak about this. In fact, when we were being there, we were briefed that, you know, the speaker might just speak out of turn. And he shocked everyone. And that is because of the continued work that has been done by people. That has been done by people in this room. So we don't have to be resilient. We don't have to do everything else. But so we create the space for others and for livelihoods, this work is important. Yeah. I hope that at some point we won't have to do it, but for now we have to do it for us and for those who are coming, you know, after us.
We have to do it, and in solidarity.
Yeah, and no, this is not a paid sponsorship speech. So
I think we have 2 more comments, if I'm correct. Can we go to this side?
Okay, thank you. I'm Jessica Bula. I am coming into this space from an academic and political perspective. Listening to the panel, found it very, not only interesting, but really has shown how we've been resilient. But I am troubled when I hear comments such as, we are not doing politics, we are moving, we are living. I agree we need to live. But I've always said, if we don't do politics, it will do us. There is no way we are going to bring change if we do not get in. The world of politics is garbage in and garbage out. Now, if you leave it for them, they will be churning out this patriarchal politics. And I get surprised when I hear us shocked that they're calling us dogs. They're calling us dogs because we are letting them use our taxpayers' money to oppress us. I think it's time the movement started to be strategic about supporting your political candidates and have a strategy to get inside, not to stay outside. In my language, we say, if you've grown maize You don't leave the field because the thief has gone in. You go in and make sure you remove the thief. As a person who has been a member of parliament and I've been chairing the Regional Women's Caucus, I've also done research. I have taught this, I've developed modules. What I'm worried about in terms of our movement is the fact that we are lacking a strategy to mainstream ourselves into the politics. If you look at SADC, if you look at AU, they are using our money to kill us. They were using our money. I am an ally. I'm not going to lie to you that I am a member of the community. But all my life, be it in my politics, be it in whatever I've done, I am on your side. But it's frustrating when we want to stay out and let them cover our bodies. It's very, very wrong. I want to appeal to the movement to actually not only think of getting into politics, but let us sponsor candidates. Those against us, the opposition, is sponsoring their people. But when I was running for re-election, I felt isolated, I felt alone, until I lost my seat. The fact, last time I came to Kopano, what I said here was played in my constituency. And they used it to come after me. But when someone like me comes to ask to organizations to support me in politics, nobody will fund me. If we continue doing this politics that says we stay out, the movement will be eliticized. It will only be for the rich because they are the only people who can afford to occupy this space. So please, let's do politics. Let us not stay out. Thank you.
Yeah. We had one more person on the side. If you can go ahead and we'll close for break and then we can continue this conversation. You may go ahead.
Great. Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy that we're talking about the sexual reproductive health conversation because for centuries, within our movements as well, it's been a one-sided story where when we talk about sexual reproductive health, it always speaks to women who have sex with women, it always speaks to men who have sex with men, but it's quite flawed in that the data and the collection and the responses to sexual reproductive health never take into consideration, for example, transgender men. In the responses to HIV, in the responses to prevention, I mean, it's very easy to go to a garage and buy condoms, but condoms that speaks to the kind of sex that trans men have are not around. So what are we doing as NGOs, knowing how intersectional our bodies are and how intersectional we interact with one another? It's a huge problem. There's a lack of dental dams, there's a lack of finger courts, and this poses a great risk. So how then do we control the conversation and the programming to speak to everyone and not just transgender women, not just gay men, but actually speak to the lived experiences on the ground? I think it's highly problematic. And in us answering the question, how do we reinvent? I think we need to reinvent sexual and reproductive health strategies.
I wish to react to the speaker before you got on to politics. And in the 2019 elections in Botswana, there was an LGBTI person who had shown interest to stand for a councillor seat, fielded by a party, and we all spoke about it. That, oh no, we have to choose, and this is someone who is known in the community to be helping greatly. But when the primary elections in Madagascar happened, the support that we thought he would get the most, almost what you're certain of, would be that the LGBTI person in that space would support him. But like Mama was saying, she stood alone, and so did he. So perhaps the question within this room is how ready are we to support our own in practical terms, right? So we support each other, yes, we're together, we're family, but what does it mean and how does it look like? It's a conversation of, oh, let's come out. When that person comes out and feels, goes through backlash, how many of us will be able to support that person practically to ensure that they have a safe home, to ensure that they're safe, to ensure that they have campaign money, to ensure that they're alive? So perhaps as we talk reinvention, let's also critically analyze and look at ourselves. how ready are we to truly support our own in such spaces?
And just to add, I think we also need to get deeper into understanding our own areas, our own regions, our own countries, because this is just more than just this space where we feel safe, where we can do whatever, but going back to your country, where you understand how the politics stands, how can you protect that person from all these things? I'm not going to get into my country and the politics that are there at the moment. It's too much. But if we take someone to that position, look at the exposure. So how ready are we to protect that person to that end, so that they can be able to actually do what we intend and what we want as a community? Those are the things we need to do. Get deeper to our personal kind of spaces to see if it's possible and how can we do it.
Thank you so much. Thank you to Mr. Owen. Thank you to Professor. And I think that when we think of this conversation is that I think what stood out for me the most is that as a community, we really have to figure out ways of how are we going to show up for each other? How are we going to stand together? You know, like what we've experienced in the last few years, this is still going to continue. But like Sazi has said, like what have we learned and what are we going to do? And I think we're going to have an opportunity to discuss this after break. But I think, like, when I just think of we were just at ILGA, right, and doing the bid to host the next ILGA 2024 in Africa, and just the support of the community, those that were present and those that were not present, it was felt so much that there was no way that the bid was not coming to Africa. Like, there was just no way. And that just shows that as Africans, when we come together, we can achieve anything. We can conquer everything. I want to thank Professor. I want to thank Mr. O. I also want to thank Uzna that's not here, but she is felt and she is heard. And you know, we must say in this space. And I want to thank her, and I want to thank the other foundation. And thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Just a few announcements before we break. We've totally lost control of the time, but we will break for 30 minutes. And when we come back, we're not coming back here. If you look on your tag, you've got different colors. So this means some have green, blue, orange, pink, and purple. We are going to break and separate according to the colors. So green will go to room T1, blue, room T2, orange, T3, pink, room 2A, purple, room 2B. Please, 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 may I plead, let us be mindful of time so that we'll be able to do everything. We might have to shorten the sessions though, but we are moving to T, and there's another announcement.
Yes, as a reminder as well to get the rapporteur to do the audio-visual 1-minute video, please. And we will be able to carry on the discussion from this panel this morning. And for delegates, beautiful people, delegates of Botswana, you are requested to gather at the other foundation banner once we break. After lunch, we do have self-organized sessions. And these will be shown on the screen in the dining area. And you will also have volunteers to guide you to those self-discussion. So I think it is it from my side.
Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to talk to the issue of translation. Please remember that language is an indicator of diversity. Therefore, we have to ensure that our friends and colleagues from Angola and Mozambique, for example, are able to effectively participate in this process by getting translation services. We have two colleagues, Paula and Carol, who are helping us with translation. That's sitting next to our friends so that they can do the translation as we speak. So for the folks sitting around them, please don't hush them. Please understand that, you know, we have to move together. This also means for those of us who are making submissions, be it as panelists or speakers from the floor, we therefore need to slow down so that they can translate and we can all move at the same pace. And then on the issue of language, when we started, we agreed on, respectful engagement. Therefore, I kindly ask, let's please not use foul language. Some people are uncomfortable with expressions of that nature. It's not censorship, it's just about sharing space and working well with each other. Please remember, use the color coding on your tag. If you are unclear, please find one of the volunteers who will explain to you. Watch the screens so that you know exactly where your room is. Enjoy your lunch. For those who are interested in a self-organized space, please note that the sessions that were listed on the screens, that is not the exhaustive list of the spaces that we have. There's space for impromptu sessions if people want to organize. It can be, depending on advocacy strategies, and other organizing points. For example, we've just been asked, for those who work with parents or families of LGBTI people, please meet outside this room, and then somebody will take you to a space that's been identified for those conversations. So for those impromptu sessions, and actually for all the self-organized sessions, the people leading those sessions are responsible for communicating about what the sessions are, about holding the space. And for those who want to do impromptu sessions, please invite people, use the break, use lunch to share about your session so that people can know what sessions are available. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your break.
So I want to just recap on those self-organization. We're breaking down for break for about 30 minutes. Then we're going into those pink, blue, green, color-coded groups. Then we have lunch, and then we have 2 parts to the self-organized sessions. After lunch and before the second tea break, there's 1 set, right? Those are listed. Sandra, please put that screen back on, and they'll be on the screen in the tea areas. Then there's a second set. Some are listed, and some are just open space for anyone who wants to organize it. Right, so it's not all at the same time. Which are the first set ones? Is that the complete list?
Yes, no. So the first slide is the first set
right.
From the second slide.
So in terms, is this the first one?
Yes.
Right, this is the first one, technically from 2 o'clock until 3 o'clock, is that right? Yes. It's not going to start at 2, but 1 hour. A break, and then the second set. Right? It's not exactly right, but anyway. What I want to ask, does anyone want to organize an impromptu session that you want to mention now? So there's one on parents and families, and who is leading that? Virginia, are you there? No. Everyone knows Virginia. So yes, I see 2 hands. So first, Anyanta. Give the microphone to Anyanta.
So we would like to just host a conversation with any trans femme or trans women identifying people in the space in the afternoon.
The second session, right?
Yes.
Fine, Kanyanta, where will you be?
We can be in the dining area.
All right.
Yes.
And there's another one there.
So there's a group of us who'd like to meet and have a conversation about interfaith work and how that relates. Perhaps we'd also just meet in the dining room in an area there. So also in the first session.
The first?
Yeah.
All right, so immediately after lunch. Anyone else? Now,